and a very warm welcome to Bharata First. I'm Rausan Pereira. You're watching UPSC Corner. Since you're here, I would like to thank you for your continued support. For those of you who haven't already subscribed, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and then all notifications. Do follow our social media handles for all the latest updates, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team is running a daily big picture quiz, so please do participate by going through the description in the big picture videos. Here are the UPI IDs for those of you who would like to come forward and contribute. A small contribution you make will be a giant leap for us to keep bringing you this content. So do continue to show your love and support. All the information is in the description of the video. Please go through it. And now it's time to meet a distinguished guest, a retired bureaucrat and author who's looked up to by the youth. He has a significant presence on social media, and despite the massive following, he is still humble, grounded, and rooted. To talk about the Indian bureaucracy, state of Indian administration, challenges, and way forward, I have with me on the program a former Secretary to the Government of India, Mr. Anil Swarup. Mr. Swarup, welcome to Bharata First.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you.
Very good morning. And, Mr. Swarup, let's start with your journey first. And, let's talk about what made you think about a career in the Indian Administrative Service? Who was it that nudged you in that direction, and how was it like in the beginning?
First of all, I don't think I gave it a thought of getting into the civil service or not. I recall when I was 10 years of age, I just started reading and writing a bit. I saw a piece of paper where my dad had decided that I would become a civil servant, an IS officer. And thereafter, it was his dream. I made it into my dream, and then I worked towards getting into the civil service. In 1980, I qualified for the police service, and in 1981, I got into the IS. The initial years were tough and very interesting. The entire career of 38 years was tough and interesting, but initial years, as I indicated in my book, there were more dilemmas than I had later on, because I had resolved internally as to how to resolve those dilemmas. So initially, yes, there were problems in the sense that I was not sure the path I was taking, and I used to mull a lot with regard to which line of action should I adopt. So, for example, as sub-divisional magistrate, there was one of the most prominent MLAs in the region. He was creating a lot of problems, and he used the opportunity or the misfortune of Indira Gandhi's assassination to raise issues against minority communities. And there was a lot of arson and harassment of the minorities community. And I was the subdivision magistrate, so I was not sure what action should I take against him because he was very powerful. Finally, I decided to make out an NSA case against him and send it to the district magistrate, who is the deciding authority. And as I sent it across to him, it got to be known, and he was very upset. He went over to Lucknow and spoke to senior people. I was summoned to Lucknow to explain my conduct. And I was a bit confused that I had done the right thing, and why am I being asked to explain? So I stuck to my guns. Finally, I was transferred out of that place. So at that point in time, I was not sure whether I was doing the right thing or not, because I thought that my transfer was a punishment to me for having done the right thing. But over a period of time, I realized that transfer was a way of life for a civil servant. And later on, as I define in my book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, I say that transfer is like death, it is inevitable. And if something that is inevitable and bound to happen, why worry about it? So my whole approach to such things changed over a period of time. But in the beginning, yes, it was tough because I was unable to take a clear call as to what I should do. But as I told you, over a period of time, I understood what I was doing. And then there were no dilemmas in my mind. Of course, dilemmas did exist outside, but I was very clear in my mind what I had to do.
Talking about these dilemmas, I'm sure these dilemmas exist even today, and some of the young bureaucrats, some of the young police service and others also go through it on a daily basis. What advice would you like to give to them, to handle such kind of situations? And also those who want to get into the service, they too will have several of these questions. And, how do they deal with the pressure?
No, it's not that complicated. Of course, I can say that with hindsight. It's not that complicated. Of course, in the beginning, yes, मुख्तसर सी जिंदगी के अजब से अफसाने हैं या तीर भी चलाने हैं परिंदे भी बचाने हैं. So that is the quintessential dilemma. But if you have clarity of thought in your mind, if you know what is right and what is wrong, at least you may not know the ultimate right and wrong, but at that point in time, there's no disconnect between what you think is right and wrong and what you do, then there's not much of a problem. Problem arises when you know what is right and you do something else. That's where the problem arises. So my advice to all youngsters who are in the process of joining the civil service or are in the civil service, seek guidance from others. There's no harm in it. Look at those civil servants who have succeeded despite the problems that have existed. They've been honest and efficient. Because I go on to explain in my book that there's just being honest doesn't help. You have to be efficient because the man on the ground doesn't uh, is not really bothered about you're honest or dishonest. Honesty is more personal to an individual, whereas efficiency is where you impact others, where you do. So whereas personally speaking, you have to be honest, that's a necessary condition, but certainly not a sufficient condition as far as delivery is concerned. So once you have this clarity of thought as to what you got to do, then the problems come down. The bottom line in all this is your expectation of others, your expectation from others, your expectation of yourself. Once you can level that, then the problem ceases to exist. The moment you start expecting of others, for example, in my 38 years of my career, I never went to a politician for a personal favor, never. And I could live the life that I could because of that. Because there is always a quid pro quo involved whenever you go to a politician. So if you are prepared to give something, then you will get something. Now that is a call that you have to take personally. I'm not saying what I did was right or wrong, but once you start succumbing to those your own desires, then there's no end to it. Then you cannot blame the system for that. System can be blamed where you've been okay. But if you start surrendering, if you start compromising, then there is a problem. But we must also understand the difference between accommodation and compromise. This is another thing which I tell youngsters. Accommodation doesn't mean compromise. You accommodate because situations are not perfect around you. You accommodate because there you have to adjust to the surroundings. But that doesn't mean you compromise. Compromise means you give in irrespective of the what you think of it. So you're not giving in. So for example, if there is a law which clearly says that something should not be done, you need not do it, should not do it. But if there is a gray area where you can interpret to help somebody and lay out some guidelines which would help others in future, there's no point in just sticking to the law and saying that it doesn't permit. So it's a question of how you interpret the law. A lot of governance and administration happens through interpretation of law. Now, if that interpretation is done uniformly for everyone around to help people around, there's no harm in it. But some of us who are stickler for honesty, so to say, will not even interpret that law in somebody's favor. So, for example, if a politician asks me to do something, I also had that problem in the beginning. I thought all politicians were rascals, ruffians, and they come for wrong things. I had that impression, and how wrong I was. They are as good or as bad people as anybody else. So you don't have to be prejudiced against anybody. If a politician is seeking certain assistance, you have to think positively to help him, provided it does not violate a law. Now, if you help him, in doing so, if you can lay down some guidelines for yourself, that if similarly placed people come to you, you will do exactly the same favor to them. There's no harm in it. What is the harm in it? So instead of being stickler, as I sometimes jokingly say, that when British left this country, they took justice with them and left behind laws, in-laws, and outlaws. We hang on to the laws. And one of the criticisms against the civil service or bureaucracy is that they are stickler for rules. I mean, one should not violate the rules. But if you read my book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, I've given a number of situations where you could interpret the law for benefiting people. Why shouldn't we do that?
Absolutely. Since you're talking about prejudices and you're talking about perceptions, there is a general perception amongst the public that the bureaucracy is by and large corrupt. And also, it's a multi headed beast which has a ravenous appetite. What would you say to that? How do you believe we can change this perception? Where does the onus lie?
So let us look at various levels at which this perception can change. Because I believe that a large number of civil servants, very large number of them are committed. दिखाई कम दिया करते हैं बुनियाद के पत्थर, जमीन में दब गए जो इमारत उन्हीं पे कायम है. So they're doing selflessly job that doesn't get to be known. This perception is primarily on account of what gets to be known. Unfortunately, what gets to be known, because we are fond of masala, what gets to be known is all negative. So how do we change that? First, of course, at a fundamental level, I think if there are wrongs with the civil service, and there's a full chapter in my book, they need to be corrected. That, of course, is the substantive change that has to be brought about in the civil service. But more than that, when I talk to youngsters, I ask them, what can you do? I mean, one is you can keep cursing that this is wrong, that is wrong. The other is, and that is something which I've started now, an excess of good, is to identify people who are doing good work, to understand what good work they're doing, to appreciate that good work. Why? Because let there be value associated with good work. If good work doesn't get appreciated, then why would anybody do good work? What is the value proposition for him to doing good work? Because he will also always perceive that good work cannot be done because it is not being done. And anyone who does good work is put to pain, which is incorrect. But a common man should first look at how he can contribute to improving the state of affairs. I mean, you can't change it overnight, but who stops a common man or a young person to appreciate good work? Why don't we do that? हम मुक्त कर्ण से बुराई करते हैं, मुक्त कर्ण से तारीफ क्यों नहीं करते? Because then those that are fence sitters will get induced to do some good work. That is the way that a common man can do it. How civil service can improve its image, that's a separate story altogether. I am not talking because my audience here is primarily aspirants to civil servants. Now, everyone talks about changing the nation, the society, and forget what the Mahatma said, be the change you wish to see in the world. How about you doing it? I mean, it's very easy for me to pontificate and give a long prescription as to what needs to be done to improve the image of the civil service. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know. But I can certainly say that those that are listening to this conversation can make a difference. At least they should start to make a difference. This is not to say that you should not criticize what's going wrong. I do that. But you must equally appreciate what the good work is happening. So that let the world know that it's not only wrong that is happening, there's a lot of good work that is happening. That is number one. Number two, you demonstrate that good can happen because it is happening. Because otherwise, people are cynical. They say nothing good can happen without realizing a lot of good is happening. It is not talked about, it's not discussed, it's not appreciated. That really needs to be done to change the paradigm. Now, I have always believed that stop trying changing the world, changing the society, because everyone talks in general terms. It's very easy to give a general bhashan, general gyan. Everyone talks about bada corruption hai. So what do? You can give a bhashan on what, but it is not happening. So how do you make it happen? You make it happen by appreciating honest and efficient officers. How much do we do that? We have to look inwards and see. Do we sufficiently appreciate honest and efficient officers? Do that, because then you'll see those that are sitting on the fringe would want to become honest and efficient. What is the reward they're getting? I mean, it's human to look for such rewards. Are we rewarding such people? And reward doesn't mean monetary or anything. Reward means a word of appreciation. It is magical, but we don't use that sufficiently.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of good work going around. There are many good officers, many good people doing some fantastic work, not just in the civil service, but also even otherwise outside of it. And that's something that we need to highlight. But then talking about highlighting, you also have incidents like the DM of Tripura. And these kind of incidents get highlighted all across the country and send out a wrong kind of message as well. There is also this other aspect of, civil servants and other bureaucrats taking active part in social media, many of them resorting to activism on social media as well. Your thoughts on both these issues?
First of all, I think what happened in Tripura was condemnable. I personally condemned it on social media because he does not represent the civil service. He is truly an exception, and that's why if everyone was behaving like that, it won't come into news. By definition is exception. So it needs to be condemned so that it doesn't be repeated. So I'm very clear in my mind that officers who are not doing what they ought to do need to be told. In fact, internally, I do that. I talk to a lot of officers to tell them on their face, even if you become unpopular, so be it. I tell them this is not done. And this is the term that I have used while tweeting. I said this is not done. So whereas I was talking of appreciation, I think if a wrong gets done, but that wrong should not be generalized. That's the problem with us. We tend to believe that every DM is a Tripura DM. No, it is not. I mean, I know personally because I'm in touch with hundreds of officers. Some fabulous work is being done. But if some wrong gets done, like here, I also condemned what happened in Hathras, because that another condemnable act. So there's no harm in it. I mean, when I was in service, I never went to town or went to public or Twitter. But now I'm a private man, I do that. So that is what it is. Second, use of social media. Now, social media is an instrument. You can use it, you can abuse it. Look at what is happening during these COVID times. A lot of people are using it positively to convey information regarding what is required where. A lot of people are conveying information what is available so that they can meet and use that. I'm absolutely impressed with what I tweeted very recently that I'm pleasantly aghast at the positive manner in which social media is being used. But then there is a negative. Look at some of the language that is used on social media. I feel ashamed. I feel ashamed because it reflects our culture. Is that a culture? It's very unfortunate. So, in my own polite way, I can communicate to those people one on one that why should you use such language? The abusive language on the Twitter. It's not done. Then coming to the point that you raised, civil servants using social media. I have personally no quarrel with that. In fact, I would want civil servants to use social media because there's no better way of disseminating information. Now, let's understand the difference between disseminating information or publicizing yourself. Now, this subtle difference has to be understood. I've seen civil servants, वो कहीं फीता काट रहे हैं उसकी फोटो डाल रहे हैं ट्विटर पे, वो कोई मीटिंग ले रहे हैं उसकी. What is the sense of doing all that? But some of us do it. It takes all types to make this world. And I think this should be a part of the training at the academy where they should be told clearly about do's and don'ts on social media. So social media is an amazing instrument through which you can reach out. I remember how I got into Twitter. I was Secretary Coal and we were doing this coal block auction. So everyone used to ring me up. Sir, what is the status? What is the status? And I was mad at responding to those calls because I wanted to respond. So my son told me, why don't you go on to Twitter? I said, what is Twitter? So he explained to me. He said, once you tweet a particular information, the world will know, whoever wants to know will know it there. You don't have to keep responding to telephone calls. I got onto Twitter and India Today came up with my photograph writing below Twitter secretary because I used to tweet regularly every hour regarding what was going on the coal block auction. But that obviated my talking to people individually because the information was there. So I discovered the power of the media, social media. It is extremely powerful. So I would not suggest it should be avoided, but it should be used appropriately for disseminating information, disseminating good news, not about yourself, but others, telling others that this good work. That's what I do regularly. Almost on a daily basis, there is a positive story that I host in which I indicate how that good work has been done, just to demonstrate again that good work can be done because it is being done. But this is not to say you shouldn't use it for criticism purpose. It can also be used for criticism, but it has to be a positive criticism in the sense that you're not criticizing for the sake of criticizing. Unfortunately, social media, especially Twitter, is being used for social bashing. That I don't think is right because it is an instrument. There's nothing wrong with the instrument per se. It has the potential of being used in a particular manner. You can use it in another manner.
Absolutely. I think constructive criticism is what we should stick to. And if we can get that and we can build on that, it is great as well. One more thing that I've noticed, especially on social media and digital platforms, is that, they don't give out their real names and their true faces. They usually hide behind a cartoon character or a pseudonym and then hurl all the abuses at the top of their voice. So I think this also needs to change. And like you said, we have to bring in some kind of societal values as a whole. Maybe the education system can change that at some point in time, Mr. Swarup.
Again, we are throwing the ball somewhere else, education system. So, अंग्रेज आएंगे उसको ठीक करने के लिए. No. I would rather start with myself. I'd rather start with those people I'm talking to just now. Because my influencing them is much more than talking about something which someone else has to do at some point in time, which will never happen. It will be reduced to an academic discussion. Most of the discussions are academic in nature. Everyone is telling somebody else somewhere to do something. It doesn't work that way. Because then it may have value in terms of discussion and all. But if you really want to change, start with yourself and with the people around you. If you can change them, fair enough. Then they will change other people. Start with yourself. So I have refrained from making general comments like that. Of course, I do make general comments in terms of what needs to be done, but I don't throw it to somebody else. If you read my book, there is nothing outside of what I have done. So I'm not saying that this should be done. Nowhere in the book I pontificate and say this should be done. What I've said, this is what I did. And I don't even say that that is right. I said this is what I did at that point in time. And I've questioned myself. Was it right? Was it not right? So I would rather indulge in that sort of a discussion than saying education system agar theek ho jaye to desh ka udhar ho jayega. No, what have we said by saying that? We
Absolutely.
will do
Points
it.
taken.
How? So we'll have to be very focused in terms of what we are attempting to do. I mean, improving the education system, no one will doubt about it. We may have a prescription also, but how does it help? I mean, there's a whole education policy now we have. If that happens, education system will improve. But let that happen. I mean, I don't have much of a role to play there. I have a role to play with persons I'm communicating with. So let's try and influence their thinking, if possible.
Tiny drops make an ocean, and if we can change one person's life, we can change one step at a time. Baby steps at a time is what you're suggesting.
Absolutely. Start with yourself. Start with yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk about another aspect which has been, in the news for some time now, and the youngsters are worried about it, especially the UPSC aspirants, that of lateral entry. On the one hand, they see that the number of vacancies every year comes down, and the government is also talking about lateral entry. So it has them, worried and scared. So how would you look at that?
As far as being scared is concerned, I would not bother about things over which I have no control. So that's the first attitude, which is very important. If the government wants to have more lateral entry or less lateral entry, can an aspirant do anything about it? Nothing. So it is again an academic discussion. Now let me come to the lateral entry itself. Having said what I have said. Now, what is the extent of lateral entry that is happening? It is not even 1% of the entire cadre. What are we talking about? And we are getting worried about issues over which we have no control and issues which have virtually no bearing on what I have to do. So why are we worried about such issues? First, there is no reason to get worried. Secondly, even if you are worried, you can't do much about it. Why discuss that? So focus on what you got to do. Focus on how do you appear in the civil service exam. Focus on how you get into it. Focus on your own good work. Let me assure everyone, if you are outstanding officer and you are efficient and honest, no lateral entry will be able to stop your progress. There are many such examples in the civil service. So why bother about those?
Another aspect, Mr. Swaroop, that I want to take up with you that is always discussed about is that, the training that is received at the civil services in the Indian Administrative Service, we are looking more at generalized officers and not specific people with specific, kind of roles and kind of backgrounds that they come from. Do you believe that that is addressed with the, mid-level training that we have in the services, or do you believe that needs to be addressed differently?
There are two aspects that you've raised. One is with regard to the nature of officers that you have, and secondly, whether the training corresponds to that. Let me start with the first point first. I am convinced that you don't require a specialist in the service. Because when we talk of specialization, what specialization are we talking of? For a finance secretary, should he be specialized in insurance or in budgeting or financing or monetary policy? What is the specialization that we talk of? As you go up the ladder in civil service, and I've been there, what is ultimately required is managing men and women, not your expertise in particular domain. Expertise can be outsourced, but attitude cannot be. My problem with the civil service is attitude, not expertise. As coal secretary, I didn't know hang about coal sector or how to carry out those coal block auctions. But I knew how to get experts who helped me carry out those auctions and do it as well as they came out to be. So it's not expertise, it's a question of attitude. Now, whether we are training officers for that attitude, I would not want them to become experts in the academy. I'm certain in my mind. But attitude, yes. And there, if you read a full chapter in my book as to how that can change, it starts from recruitment. We are presently recruiting people who are good at writing an answer in 30 minutes, who is good at expression, who are good at knowledge, but we don't test their attitude. I don't think even the ethics paper doesn't test their attitude. It tests their understanding of ethics and attitude, not their attitude. I mean, this has to be understood very clearly. So if I have a good command over language, I will be able to write a good answer. But whether I have that attitude is something very different. Today, there are instruments available through which you can assess the attitude of an individual. So what I have written in my book, that we should be selecting people who have leadership qualities. And communication skill is one of them, which is tested. But other skills are not. So for example, if you put me in a group discussion, I will be able to make out in half an hour what is the approach and attitude of an individual. And I'm a layman in that front, but experts can do it much better. World over, there are instruments available to assess whether a person has incipient leadership qualities or not. Now, you may still go wrong, but in 80% of cases, you will get those leaders. Look at what is happening in SSB when you select for the army. They go through a drill of 2-3 days, and more than their written and communication skills, their attitude, their approach, their aptitude is tested. This should be done in the civil service. That's so you select incipient leaders. Then, when they go to the academy, what do you teach them? Not expert, not law. You don't make them experts. Teach them how group activity is better than individual activity. So have those group activities rather than individual activities. And there are a host of them. There's a way of doing it. You can develop leaders there further. So first you have them selected that way, then you develop them. I mean, what we do there is teach them constitution, teach them IPC. I mean, a person who's qualified for the IS can study himself and do it. He doesn't require knowledge. He requires a change in attitude. Demonstrate to the officers there that if you have a positive attitude, then there are chances that you'll succeed in your career by calling those people who succeeded through positive attitude. Demonstrate to them it works. Demonstrate to them that ethics works. It is not to be taught. Ethics cannot be taught. It has to be imbibed. How do you imbibe it? By witnessing those people who followed an ethical behavior and succeeded in life. Normally, people look at those people who followed an ethical behavior and failed. No, it takes all types to make this world, and so is the case with the bureaucracy. There are good people who have done well in their careers. There are good people who couldn't do well in their career. Now, if I demonstrate to the officers there and present them to them such officers who've done this, they will learn. Then third, I mean, I can go on and on. There is a whole sort of prescription. How do you mentor these officers? When they go to the field, they don't know who to talk to. We don't have any system of mentoring. I informally mentor about 100 odd IS officers. But mentoring means that he has access to me whenever he wants to understand. I'm not providing any solution to those people. I'm hearing them out. And whatever suggestion that I give. So he's assured of some psychological support in case there is an issue that arises. Now I can go on. I'm stopping here because it will require a full 1 hour for me to explain that. But you can actually transform an officer provided you select such an officer. You know, large number of officers are individually brilliant, but as a group, they are total failures. Someone should analyze and see what has happened to the toppers of the IS. Where do they stand now? They will understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Because it's not a question of topping there. It's a question of taking people along. That's the key. And that's not done at the academy and thereafter.
Absolutely. I think these are some very valid suggestions that you've given, and I hope someone who's listening actually takes them forward. And, we need to introspect on all these matters. Before I let you go, Mr. Swaroop, one final thought on a word of advice really for young budding aspirants and those who are already in the service in the recent past, young officers who are there. What would you like to say to them?
You know, life is tough. So is the civil service. It is not all hunky-dory here, but that's the beauty of it. If you start enjoying the moments that you are in, if you don't expect things from others, then you will enjoy your existence here. You have absolutely no control over results, and hence enjoy the moments. Have faith in yourself. Never give up or give in. If things are going wrong at this point in time, if you fail at any point in time, those failures are meant as lessons. And if you can learn from those lessons, you will succeed in life, you will succeed in your service.
38 years in the civil service, Mr. Swaroop, would you still recommend it to the youngsters, all of our Indians, and would you do it all over again if you were given another chance?
Oh yes, last chapter of my first book talks precisely about that. I say that my getting into the IS was determined by my father. But after having put in 38 years, if I were to be born again, I'd like to be an IS officer all over again, because I can't think of a better service anywhere in the world that gives me such an opportunity to serve the people. It's phenomenal, absolutely amazing. I enjoyed every moment of it, and hence I'd like to be an IS officer all over again.
Mr. Swaroop, a pleasure having you on Bharata First. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your views and your thoughts. And I'm sure it will be very, very interesting and also influential as far as the youth who are watching are concerned. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
Once again, thank you for your continued support. For those of you who haven't already subscribed, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and then all notifications. Do follow our social media handles for all the latest updates, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs a daily big picture quiz. Please do participate by going through the description in the big picture videos. Here are the UPI IDs for those who would like to come forward and contribute. A small contribution you make will be a giant leap for us to keep bringing you this content. So do continue to show your love and support. All the information is in the description of the video, so kindly go through it. That's it from me. See you again next time.